Welcome. Today we're going to spend time on the first of 5 series of delivering rigorous reading instruction. Today's session is about phonemic awareness. In this recording, there will be some times during the session where I will give you an opportunity to stop and visit with your partner or stop and reflect if you're watching this alone. So I will indicate that opportunity by saying, please push pause on the recorder and visit with your partner about a given topic or a given question. When you're finished visiting, if you'll return to the webinar, push resume, then you will be ready to carry on with the work that we're going to do together. I also have given you several handouts to be included in this webinar, and I will refer to them as we go along. So if you will be sure that you have both the PowerPoint and the additional handouts ready, that would be great, and we will get started. Very good. So our goals for today, the beginning goal we have is to spend some time with the idea of the framework for literacy in the state of Alaska. And Alaska has the Alaska Birth to Graduation Literacy Blueprint that was developed about a year and a half ago, and I'll talk a little bit about that so you have an understanding of where this information that we're going to share today is grounded and what kind of a framework it's nested in. We're also going to talk about the critical skills within phonemic awareness and what are the objectives, what are we trying to accomplish with our work with phonemic awareness, and what does that really mean. Then we're going to look at the progression of reading skills so you can see where phonemic awareness fits within reading development. And then I have resources that I'll show and share with you regarding building phonemic awareness in young children. So the Alaska Birth to Graduation Blueprint was developed based on federal funding. The federal government gave each state $150,000 to bring together a group of folks to build a literacy plan, statewide literacy plan across the country. Alaska brought together 14 educators from various communities. They were some from rural communities, some from bush communities, some from urban in Anchorage and Fairbanks, some in Juneau. And there were folks represented on the team in the 0 to age 5 grade span, kindergarten to grade 5 age span, and grade 6 through grade 12. And you'll notice when you have a chance to take a look at the blueprint that it is built in those different grade bands. Also, there were folks who were brought together on the team who had experience with RTI, who had extensive literacy backgrounds. There were folks who came to represent various ethnic groups, various cultural groups, various languages spoken. And so the team was put together thinking about the whole state of Alaska. In the blueprint, when you look in the instruction and intervention section of the plan, you'll see that it's divided in a couple of ways. Number one, it's divided into instructional content. What is it we should be focusing on in our literacy instruction? And then you'll notice it also has a section on delivery. What does effective literacy instruction look like, and how do we deliver that? Then you'll also see some keywords. You'll see the components of reading: phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, comprehension, vocabulary, and writing. And there will be pieces that are addressed in each section. In this webinar series, there will be a webinar today on phonemic awareness. The next webinar will be on phonics. The webinar after that will be fluency, and then comprehension, and then vocabulary. So we'll be doing 5 webinars that address each of these areas. You will also see in the blueprint that we speak to explicit and systematic instruction so that students receive focused instruction that really helps them understand the key concepts in the area of literacy, and systematic, which means that the scope and sequence is built over time so that all skills are covered and that there's enough practice and repetition so students can really master those skills. And then also intervention is really based on the identified needs of the students. So the work we're going to do today is a bit of the foundation for some of the literacy blueprint. You'll also notice in the content of instruction that there's a section that speaks to oral language and vocabulary, print awareness, and then phonological awareness. So today that's a part of what we're working on. You'll also notice letter knowledge, fluency, comprehension, writing, and disciplinary literacy as well. The sixth webinar that we will be doing related to the blueprint will have to do with adolescent literacy and disciplinary literacy. So today, when we think about phonemic awareness, what does that mean, and how do we really use phonemic awareness work in our classroom to support our young kids? Phonemic awareness is not phonics. It is actually the ability to hear and manipulate the structure of language. So we use a broad term called phonological awareness. That is the big umbrella that tucks all of the phonemic awareness skills within it. So it's an encompassing term that involves working with sounds in our language, both at the word, the syllable, and the phoneme level. And we'll talk more about that. So when you hear phonological awareness, you'll know that's a big umbrella. And today we're going to work on the idea of phonemic awareness within that umbrella. So phonemic awareness is not phonics. It's very different in that it does not have any print. So here's a way to think about that. If you were to close your eyes and I said to you, what are the sounds you hear in horse? You would be able to close your eyes and say, horse. And you would be able to hear the sounds, identify the sounds in the word horse. If I said to you, how do you spell the word horse? You would say H-O-R-S-E, which has to do with the letters. That is, anytime there is a letter involved or print, that is phonics. So phonemic awareness is all auditory and doesn't involve any letter names, any letter sounds, any letters or words whatsoever. So a lot of times we have a misunderstanding between phonemic awareness and phonics. So why is phonemic awareness important? Well, one of the things that we have learned through the convergence of research is that phonemic awareness is the precursor to being able to decode with a lot of accuracy when students get a little older. So many of you know that I have 4 children, and my third born had a lot of hearing difficulty when she was young. She had ear infections that would rupture her eardrum, and she had trouble hearing. So one day she came running down the stairs and she said to me, Mama, I think it's time for my hemorrhoids. And I said, oh, my goodness, I think it's probably you mean your steroids. And she said, oh, yes, what are hemorrhoids anyway? Actually, that should have been a big alert for me and a big alert for her teachers because she is not hearing the initial syllable correctly. So she had the roid part right, hemorrhoid, steroid. But the beginning syllable she had mixed up, and actually that happens to her all the time because of her hearing when she was a young child. That doesn't sound like a very big issue, but what happens as the child grows older, they don't hear the sounds correctly, and then when they are reading the words, they don't put the sounds together with the letter combinations appropriately. And then that actually compounds into a bigger problem. So when she was 24, she was in college, and she stood beside me, and she had written a Mother's Day card. And on that Mother's Day card, she didn't write anything complicated, but at the end of that Mother's Day card, when I read it, she said to me, Mama, did I spell everything okay? And what I realized with her is that she's 24, college educated, and still she's terrified about spelling words incorrectly. So one of the issues that happens for students who have poor phonemic awareness is that it shows up later in their writing and in their spelling. When she was 25, she worked for a company that had Microsoft as a client. And she had to write a memo in the evening to the client at Microsoft. And there was no one there to help her proofread her memo. And it had to go out. So she typed the memo. She read it. She said, "Mom, I read it 100 times. She sent it. And the next morning, she came back to work, and her boss called her in. And a word had been circled all the way through the memo. And she had written the memo to Dear Brain. Why would she do that? She wrote the memo to Dear Brain because she hadn't realized that the AI does not make the same sound as IA. And AI, as you know, is a vowel combination, and that the first vowel says its sound. And IA is not a vowel combination. Each of those vowels makes their own sound. So that sounds very, very silly that we would give this much attention to something in terms of phonemic awareness, but the implications for students as they go through school is significant. So we want to be really clear about what phonemic awareness is and how do we build phonemic awareness with our young kids so that they can map those sounds right onto those letters as they are learning to read. Many folks have also asked me, can you build phonemic awareness in a student's primary language? So you absolutely can. For example, if a student speaks Yupik and you build phonemic awareness in their primary language, the only addition you would build to that would be that you would support students in sounds that are in English that are not in their native language. So once you build phonemic awareness, the ability to hear and manipulate sounds, you only then need to transition that to English with the sounds that their primary language doesn't include. And so many folks, especially in rural Alaska and bush Alaska, have asked me, can you build phonemic awareness in their native language? And the answer is absolutely so. And then you be sure that they learn the sounds of English as well so that they can learn to hear those particular sounds also. So let's take an example and some non-examples. So how many sounds do you hear in hop? Right, 3 sounds, right? Hop. Great. How do you spell hop? H-O-P. Great. So the first example, how many sounds do you hear in hop? That is phonemic awareness. How do you spell hop? That is phonics, because you are writing you are putting the letter name in, H-O-P. So that's phonics. Let's do the next one. What is the first sound you hear in hop? Great. That's phonemic awareness. What is the last letter in hop? Right, P. That's phonics. So example 1 is phonemic awareness. Example 2 is phonics. Example 3 is phonemic awareness. And example 4 is phonics. We'll spend a little bit more time there, but that gives you a little bit of an indicator that phonemic awareness is always with sounds only, and when you put a letter to it, it becomes phonics. So here are some definitions that may help when the webinar is over and you are off doing work with your students. A phoneme is a speech sound. It's the smallest unit of language, and it has no inherent meaning. So for example, if I say to you, ch, the ch doesn't have any meaning, right? It's just a sound. It's just the C and the H put together to make the ch sound. If I say to you, t, that has no meaning also. It's just the sound t. Phonological awareness, as we spoke earlier, is the ability to hear and manipulate that sound structure of all of our language. So being able to work at the word level, the syllable level, and the phoneme level. So when I was saying that Chelsea had trouble with hemorrhoid and steroid, she was having trouble with phonological awareness at the syllable level. So she had a hard time with the beginning syllable in those two words. Phonemic awareness is the ability to manipulate the spoken sound or the sounds in our spoken language. And it's the understanding that spoken words are made up of small speech sounds that are all put together. And it's the ability to hear our language at the phoneme level, at the very smallest level. So when I gave the example of hop, there are 3 phonemes, ah, p. And being able to take that word of hop and hear each and every phoneme within that word is important for kids, and that's what we call phonemic awareness. Phonics is the process of using the code, the sound-symbol relationship, to recognize words, knowing that if you see the H-O-P on the board or in a book, that you would know that the H sound has the, or the H symbol has the H sound, the O has the ah sound, and P has the P sound. And then you put those together and they make the word hop. That's phonics, being able to put the symbol with the sound. So now what I'd like you to do is turn to your partner for a moment, and if you are working on this webinar alone, I'd like you to pause the recorder and just give some thought to this question. If you're with a team, I'd like you to turn to your partners and tell them one thing that has been either new information for you, something that has been confirmed in what we've talked about so far. So if you will just take a minute and turn to your partners, one thing that is either new or confirmed that we've shared so far. Welcome back. Thank you. Great work. Really appreciate you taking a moment to think about that. So now let's really dig into phonemic awareness and find out what this really means and what's all encompassed within phonemic awareness. So there are many skills within phonemic awareness that we need to attend to with our young kids. So let's start in the top left. And the top left skill is about rhyming. So there are also 3 different areas of rhyming that our students need to be able to do. Rhyme recognition is if I say to you, I'm going to tell you 2 words and I would like you to tell me if they rhyme. Happy, sappy. Do they rhyme? Yes, very good. All right, now I'm going to tell you 2 more words and tell me if they rhyme. Dog, funny. No, they don't rhyme. So that is rhyme recognition. I give the words to you and you be able to say yes, they do rhyme, or no, they don't rhyme. Rhyme completion is the next layer in the hierarchy. And if I say to you funny, then you give a word that rhymes with funny, like money or sunny. So if I say happy, you would say sappy, clappy. That's rhyme completion. Rhyme production is the highest level of skill in rhyming, and that is when you or the child can produce a rhyme on their own. So they would say dog, bog, cat, hat. So that's when they can produce both of the words that rhyme. So a big conversation has come up in the state of Alaska regarding rhyming, because in some students' primary language, rhyming is not a part of the language. So one of the things that's really important for us as we're beginning to think about teaching young children is that rhyming is a goal and a focus for us with our students. However, it is not a barrier for us to go on to the next sets of skills. So if you're from an area where students really speak their primary language from quite young until they come to school, and it is not a language that has rhyme within it, I don't want you to focus on it to a degree that you don't go on to the other skills. You give rhyming a try, you spend some time on it with your kids, but you don't hold them up in the other skills as well. And it's not something you would panic about if your kids are not able to rhyme. Phoneme isolation, we're going to go down the chart on the left. So phoneme isolation, that's being able to take a sound and hear, hear an individual sound. For example, if I said to you, happy, what's the first sound in happy? You would say, if I said, what's the last sound in happy? You would say, E. So that's phoneme isolation. If I said to you, what's the middle sound in cut? You would say, ah. So that's being able to isolate the sounds within the word. Phoneme deletion is taking the sound off. That is a pretty hard skill for our kids. So if I said, what is the word happy without the h? And the student would say, happy. And if I said, what is the word happy without the ending sound? And the student would say, hap. That's a pretty sophisticated phonemic awareness skill, but it's one that's very important. So as we're working with phonemic awareness, we want to be sure that our core program and our reading instruction really works with our kids on phoneme deletion. Phoneme substitution. So if I said happy, and I said change the first sound of happy to s, the student would say sappy. So if I said change the last sound in cat to n, the word is cat, make the last sound n, the word would be can. So that's phoneme substitution, which is also a really difficult skill. And you'll notice it says the initial sound. So one of the things we want to be able to have kids do is change that beginning sound. So if I say cat, change the k to h, the word would be hat. If I said change hat, the first sound to b, the word would be bat. So that's actually something called onset and rhyme. So you want students to be able to manipulate that first sound in a word, and then the rest of the sound stays the same. So that's actually word families. So for when you get into phonics and reading, you teach kids word families like bat, cat, hat, mat, sat. And those at the phonemic awareness level, being able to hear those sounds is really important before you move to the print and being able to read those words. So that's phoneme substitution. Syllables. It's very important that our students are able to do three things at the syllable level. One is blend, one is segment, and one is delete. So let's take happy again. So how many syllables do you hear in happy? I'm going to say 2 syllables, and I want you to blend them together. Happy. What's the word? Happy. Good job. Let's do funny. Fun-y. What's the word? Funny. Good. Let's do circle. Circle. What's the word? Circle. So you put those syllables together. With students who are in first grade, you would want to be using 3- and 4-syllable words. So if I said construction, what's the word? Construction. If I said rectangle, rectangle. 3 syllables, what's the word? Rectangle. Good job. So as students get older, you want to be sure that you do more than 2-syllable words, because they need to be able to hear, manipulate those syllables, so that when they're reading multi-syllable words, they have a sense of the sound of those. Segmentation. So if I say the word happy, the student would say happy. So blending is taking the syllables and putting them together. Segmentation is taking the syllables apart. Funny, fun-y. Circle, circle. Construction, construction. Okay, so that's segmentation, being able to take those syllables apart. Deletion. So if I said take the first syllable off of funny, what do you have? Me. take the first syllable off of construction, what do you have? Struction. Okay, so that's syllable deletion, which is really hard for kids to learn. So we want to be sure that we deliver instruction that provides support for them. Phoneme segmentation, that's the ability to take each of the phonemes apart in a word. So if I said pretty, sorry, that's not right. If I said pretty, it'd be T. Okay? So taking each syllable apart and segmenting. So let's take a little bit easier word. Fast. Ast. There are 4 phonemes in the word fast. If I said fight, fight's pretty tricky. There are 3 phonemes in the word fight. However, if you were to write the word fight, you would see that there's F and I and G, H, T. There are 5 letters in the word fight, but only 3 phonemes. So it's very important when you're doing phonemic awareness not to put the word up on the board or not to show the kids the word or the print because you're listening for the sounds only. Fight, 3 sounds in the word fight. And adding phonemes is when you would add an extra phoneme to a word at the beginning or at the end for them to be able to add on phonemes to a word. So those are the phonemic awareness skills that are important for us to build. I want you to think a little bit about your daily instruction with phonemic awareness. If you teach kindergarten, preschool, kindergarten, or first grade students, phonemic awareness should be a part of your daily instruction. It should be built into your core program. So one of the things I would like you to do right now is think about your core program. Think about your reading instruction that takes place every single day. How often is phonemic awareness taught? And when I speak about that, I mean these skills that are on this list. So if you're not really sure, what do I mean? If you were to take this list and look in your teacher's edition or look in the materials that you use for teaching every day, how often are those skills taught? Then, what activities do you do each day that supports phonemic awareness? So you may deliver phonemic awareness work right inside of your reading instruction. I also know that teachers who really work on phonemic awareness do it all day long. So they may do phonemic awareness activities before they go out to recess. They may do a couple of phoneme segmentations before they go to music or before they go to language instruction. So what activities do you do every day to support phonemic awareness? And then I'd like you to also go back and think about this list. Which parts of phonemic awareness might you be missing? So for example, your reading program materials that you use may be really great with phoneme segmentation. They really might be great with phoneme blending, but they don't do any work with syllables or deletion or substitution. So what parts of phonemic awareness might you be missing that you would need to tighten up your instruction with your kids each day so that they have an opportunity to master all of those skills? So I'd like you to turn and visit with your partner about these 3 questions. And if you are working on this webinar alone, I would like you to just jot down some notes. Feel free to get your teacher's edition while we take pause and really look inside your materials that you're using and work on these 3 questions. So what I'd like you to do is pause your recording, visit with your partner about each of these questions, and check with your materials and see what you have. I'll see you back in a moment. Great. Welcome back. So now we're going to spend a couple of minutes on looking at some strategies or some activities that you could do in your classroom to help build the skills within phonemic awareness. So we use something called Elkonin Boxes to help our kids sometimes really build those skills. So this is a website that you may find valuable that will help you with all kinds of resources. So there are lots of different things you can pull from this website to help. Elkonin Boxes really look like this. And actually, when you put your boxes together, they don't have anything in them. They're just empty boxes. And I often use Unifix cubes or a button or a rock, an object to put in those Elkonin boxes as you're working. So you don't really have to have anything fancy. This is the way it works. So if you are working with words that have 3 phonemes, you put down 3 boxes. If you are working with words that have 4 phonemes, you use the 4 boxes, and so on. So really, it looks like this. So I'm going to ask students, let's assume that they have a Unifix cubes in front of them. I'm working with a group of kids, and they have Unifix cubes or a button or a rock, and I say, show me the sounds in cat. Very good, cat. So my words to the kids are, show me the sounds in cat. So they put down the green for the k sound, the blue for the a sound, and the red for the t sound. And the Elkonin boxes just give them a spot to put all of those sounds. So here's another example. On the website that I gave you with Elkonin boxes, there will be worksheets like this that kids can use. Show me the sounds in ship. Sh. So let's stop and look at this for a moment, because the first box of sh, that is the S and H letter put together, but it makes one sound of sh. So even though there are 2 letters, there's just one box and one red dot in that box. So there are 3 sounds in ship. Sh, if. Okay? And here are the sounds for cat that we already looked at. So that's how you use Elkonin boxes. It's not complicated, and it doesn't take very many materials, and it also is something that kids can do in a center and practice. So you'll notice on these pages that there are pictures, but there are no words. So if you're going to design phonemic awareness activities for centers or for kids to practice independently, if you go to that website of the Elkonin boxes, you can type in words that you would like to have turned into pictures, and then they create the work. There's a worksheet that they create for you, and then you just print it out. So you can choose whether you want 3 sounds, 4 sounds, 5 sounds, 2 sounds, and you can build your Elkonin box practice page that way. So I thought that might be a nice resource for you to be able to use. So let's think about some tricky phonemes. There are some, and I gave you a sheet. It says tips on tricky phonemes, and this will be a resource for you later. There are some tricky phonemes for kids. For example, blends. If I were to say brr, BR, that is a blend. It has the b, sound in it. So it has both the B sound and the B sound and the sound. So that is a blend when 2 letters are put together, but each of them have their own sound. So if I were to say the blend of sl, like in slip, you would still hear the s sound and you hear the l sound. But the SL is something we call a blend. So those are tricky for kids to be able to make sure that they hear each of those sounds. So with blends, the goal is they hear each sound. R controlled. So that is in a word like work. In work, you hear w, k. The O and the R go together. They are something called an R-controlled sound. And the R-controlled, actually it's an R-controlled syllable. In, let's do dirt, dirt. So there are 3 sounds. So the I and the R are combined together, and that's called an R-controlled sound. Those are hard for kids. So you want to be sure that as you're doing your phonemic awareness activities, be sure to put blends and are controlled into your work. So if you were using an Elkonin box picture, you could use like even the word truck. So truck has a blend of TR. So if there were a picture of a truck, there would be 4 boxes. K, 4 boxes. But the first one is a blend of TR. Okay? So then diphthongs. So diphthongs are 2 vowels that go together. So for example, AI in train. N. So there are 4 phonemes in train. And AI is 2 letters that are put together, but it makes the A sound. So that's where Chelsea had a lot of trouble when she was a kid growing up. She didn't recognize when those 2 vowels to go together, they actually only made 1 sound of A. So diphthongs are tricky for kids. Digraphs. So when I said ship, the SH is a digraph. Those are 2 letters that are put together, and they make 1 sound. So if I said chip, CH is put together, and they make 1 sound. So that's a digraph. Those are also tricky for kids. And then the number of phonemes. So how many phonemes are in a word. So those are some things that are tricky for kids that we want to be sure they get a lot of practice with our work. So if we're only doing words like hat, cat, hop, sun, those are pretty simple. So we want to be sure to include these that are on this PowerPoint in our work with our kids. So let's talk for a few minutes about how we assess phonemic awareness. So there are 2 different ways that we're going to assess it. Number 1 is with universal screening. So if you use something like AimsWeb, something like Dibbles, those are universal screenings. And phonemic awareness is very important for us to know how our kids are doing. In those universal screening measures, phoneme segmentation is the key skill that research has shown would tell us if kids are having trouble. So a lot of times I work with kindergarten teachers, and they're not sure why we give, it's called PSF, the phoneme segmentation fluency. And the reason that you give phoneme segmentation fluency is to find out, are your kids likely to have a phonemic awareness issue? And if they don't do well on the phonemic segmentation screening, that lets you know, aha, there might be an issue with phonemic awareness in this child. So had we done universal screening with my daughter, we would have noticed right away that she had phonemic awareness difficulties, and we could have gone back and delivered phonemic awareness instruction for her. But at the time when she was little, she's 28 now, at the time she was little, we weren't doing universal screening, and we missed her. And I'm an educator, and I was an educator at that time, and I didn't understand what I know now about reading and about universal screening. So when you give the phoneme segmentation fluency measure, that lets you know whether kids are probably at risk for phonemic awareness or not. And this is also bullet number 2 is an important point. Phoneme segmentation should be mastered by the end of kindergarten or the middle of 1st grade at the very latest. So this should be a set of skills that kids have down very early on. And that if they're still in 1st grade after the middle of 1st grade or 2nd grade, and they're still working on their phonemic awareness, which is manipulating the sounds, then they're going to have a hard time when it's time to move right to print, which is at the word level or at the passage level. So this is sometimes a new concept for kindergarten teachers and 1st grade teachers, that segmentation and phonemic awareness, the time frame for that should be closed by about the middle of 1st grade, especially at the early skills. They may still be working on their syllable work, but all of those other skills at the beginning level that I showed you on that other slide should be mastered by the middle of 1st grade. So now I'd like you to turn to your partners for a minute and talk about your kids. Actually, before we do that, let's go on and, let's go back and do that. I'd like you to visit with your partner for a minute about your kids and how do you do a universal screening. How do you know if your kids are on target or not for phoneme awareness, and especially in terms of phoneme segmentation. So I'll give you just a minute. This is going to be a brief conversation. So turn and tell your partners, what kind of a universal screening measure do you give for phonemic awareness in your school? Very good. Welcome back. So now I would like us to go on a little bit, and I just want to be sure we have a framework for something we call tiered instruction before we look at some data. So tiered instruction really refers to the idea that there's Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 instruction. Tier 1 really represents what all students receive. So all students should receive a good, in elementary and K3, should receive a good 90 minutes of reading instruction a day. And kids 4 through 6 should receive a good amount of reading instruction, 60 minutes a day. And that all kids receive core instruction, classroom instruction. So above the green is really what do all kids receive. Then when you look at Tier 2, there is usually a handful of students who are struggling just a little bit, who might need practice and repetition. So above the yellow box will you write practice and repetition. That means they kind of have the hang of it with the skill, but they just need some more opportunity to practice that particular skill. Students who may show up in the red category we refer to as needing Tier 3 intervention support. And what that really indicates is they don't really have a good understanding of the particular skill, and they need some really good instruction and some more intervention support in that particular area. So this is the way we think about this, and when we are looking at our data, we keep that in mind. So you'll see on this report, this is actually from AimsWeb, and this is a first grade data set, and this skill is phoneme segmentation. And that is the ability to take the phonemes apart. So remember, that's segmentation. So what you'll notice is that if you look down below the green, the target for winter for first grade is 46 phonemes. So students who have 48 phonemes, students who have 48 phonemes and above are in the green. Then you'll notice that the students in the yellow have below 47, they have 47 or below phonemes in a minute. And then the students in the red, you'll notice that they are below 38 phonemes. So the reason that this is pretty important to look at your phoneme segmentation data is that it is an alert that this student is not able to hear and manipulate sounds to the degree that they should be for their age. So when we look at this data, we would know that the students in the yellow need practice and repetition, that they have a little bit of the hang of it. So for example, if the target is 48, and then you'll see that there are 2 students who had 47 phonemes in a minute, I wouldn't be terribly worried about those kids. They just missed the target by 1 phoneme. So it's not as though they don't understand the concept. So I probably wouldn't even do much intervention support, even really for those first 3 kids. They just missed by 1 or 2 phonemes, but I'd keep an eye on them. The bottom 3 students in the yellow category, they are showing I need a little bit more practice and repetition because I'm not automatic. The reason that we give a 1-minute timing is because of cognitive demand, and we're trying to see if kids have automatic mastery of this skill, and are they able to do it with a minimum amount of cognitive demand. So the students who are in the bottom 3 students in yellow, I would give them more practice and opportunity with phonemic awareness. The students in the red, I'm a little worried about because they are significantly below their peers. in being able to hear and manipulate phonemes. When we think about my daughter, she probably would have come up in that red category, and I would have noticed, she needs more instruction in phonemic awareness. So the students in the red category, I would probably give them a little bit deeper diagnostic with phonemic awareness. So I'm going to talk about that. Actually, I'm going to go back for a minute. I will talk about a diagnostic that I think you could use. And there are several of them that I think you could use to figure out, is this child having trouble in all of the skills of phonemic awareness that we talked about earlier, or is it only in their ability to segment? So when I have a group of students who show up in the red category, my immediate response is to think about a diagnostic for those kids so that I know whether it's multiple phonemic awareness skills or really just segmentation that's giving that child trouble. So when we think about older kids, a lot of folks have said to me, what does it mean for older kids? And for kids who haven't mastered phonemic awareness and they're older, is it important that we go back and close that gap? And the answer actually is yes. That it doesn't take very long to close that gap for kids if they have some intervention support and instruction. We've also found that if you don't go back and help close those phonemic awareness gaps for older kids who are struggling, that their ability to progress is hindered. So there are things that you can do with older kids that really help close that gap quickly, but you really need to focus on it. There's some programs that focus on it, and then there are also activities that you could do with things like Elkonin Boxes that would help kids close that gap quickly. So when I talked earlier about diagnosing phonemic awareness difficulties, this is a book that, and I'm pretty picky about what books I usually refer to, but this particular book has one of the strongest phonemic awareness assessments that I have seen, and the ISBN number is up there for you. One of the things I like about this book is that it has a diagnostic assessment that diagnoses all of those skills that I talked about earlier. Some of you probably have the core phonics survey, and you have a multiple measure book that has a lot of phonemic awareness assessments in it. That's also a good book. It has a diagnostic in there for phonemic awareness as well. I'm going to show you a sample from this particular one by Yvette Skonk, and you'll see how easy it is to give. And you can give part of the assessment or the whole assessment. You can just do a little bit of it, or you can give the whole thing. It's also not timed. And the whole goal is to tell you which of those 11 areas our students are struggling with in phonemic awareness so that you can give targeted support. So let's take a look at it for a minute. This is syllable blending. So this is what the teacher would say. I'm going to say the word in a funny way. What I want you to do is put the two parts of the word together. So I'm going to give a couple of examples. Outside. What's the word? Outside. Good. Robot. What's the word? Robot. Good job. Nice job. All right, now I'm going to give you some more. Are you ready? And then you would give the first word, pencil. If the child says pencil, you mark it, and so on. So there are 6 examples of syllable blending. Here's another example on the assessment of phoneme isolation of the final sound. So you tell the child, I'm going to say a word, and I want you to tell me the last sound in the word. What's the last sound in the word pot? The child should say t. Very good. What's the last sound in rest? Good. The child should say t. So then here are the 6 that you give the child in the assessment. So in the earlier slide when I showed you all of those phonemic awareness skills, this particular book assesses each one of those skills. So you can find out where are those particular gaps for your children, and you can start to group them together and support them. One of the other nice things about this book is that it has activities in it related to each of those skills. So if you found your kids were having trouble with isolating the ending sound, there are a series of, I don't know, probably 10 activities that you can do in your classroom on how to isolate the ending sound. So after the assessment comes first in the book, and after the assessment, then there are probably 50 pages of activities related to each of these skills. So now what I would like you to do, I'd like you to think about what we covered today. So we talked about the Alaska Literacy Blueprint, just generally. We talked about what is phonemic awareness. We talked about what are all of the skills within phonemic awareness. We talked about just one general activity you could do to build phonemic awareness, which was the example of the Elkonin Boxes. And then finally, we talked about assessing phonemic awareness with the universal screening tools such as AIMS-Web that usually measures phoneme segmentation as the lead skill. And then we also just talked about diagnosing all of those sub-skills if you found that your students actually were at risk for phonemic awareness. So what I would like you to do now is turn to your partner. And if you're working on your own today, I'd like you to jot down a couple of notes. I'll give you a few minutes to turn to your partner and talk about what was your learning today. What were some of the most important things you are taking away from this webinar session? So I'll give you a couple minutes to do that, and then we will come back together. So please take a moment to talk about that and think about that for a few seconds. All right, very good. Welcome back. Thank you so much. So I hope you learned some things today and had some things confirmed for you about phonemic awareness. I would encourage you to really study your materials that you use in delivering your reading instruction. I'd love to remind you that phonemic awareness needs to happen every day for our young kids, and that it is something that can be built all day long. It doesn't happen just in your reading block. It also can happen all day long throughout the day. I also would like you to give consideration to all of those sub-skills within phonemic awareness. We tend to focus on phoneme segmentation and phoneme blending. And what we find is that kids need to be more facile with phonemic awareness than just those two skills. So I'm hoping this was helpful for you today. And if you are interested, the next webinar in the series is on phonics and advanced phonics. And I'm hoping that you will join us. So thank you. Have a wonderful day.